I've got a new setup going on, so if things look a bit weird or, the lighting's not quite right or whatever, then bear with me. I'm not a cinematographer, don't really know what I'm doing, so it's the Revenant's 10th anniversary this year, 2026. Been 10 whole years. That's kind of crazy, kind of scary. It's getting a new IMAX release, a re-release. Sadly, I am an English cinephile, by the way. There are no showings in the UK currently. Whether it'll maybe sort of spill over into March and we might get something, probably in London. It's always in London. So I can't see it in IMAX. I would love to. I missed out seeing this movie in the cinema the first time around, but screw it. I wanted to rewatch it anyway, so I rewatched it and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So 10 years ago, I guess I would have been 14. That's kind of scary. I watched it when it came out on Blu-ray for the first time.
Blu-ray delivers the best high-def picture and sound, together with advanced interactive special features unlike anything you've ever seen before.
That's hot.
And this is back when I was sort of just getting into the idea of films being more artistic, not necessarily, just commercial or for entertainment purposes, but also an artistic purpose, or the idea of a movie being shot in a particular way or in a particular style. And this movie really came out at the right time for me because it was a big movie with some big stars. It wasn't too daunting to get into, but as we'll talk about, there are a lot of things about the movie that are really quite striking and quite unique for a movie of this caliber. I wanted to revisit it with kind of an older pair of eyes and maybe reanalyze it, think about it in a different way, see what I get out of it now, being an older man, being an adult. So I think what struck me the most on this rewatch was the fact that the movie is clearly shot on digital cameras. Back when I first watched it, it might not have been something that I was really equipped to understand or to recognize visually, but watching it this time, it was really obvious to me that it was shot digitally, not on film. There's a big conversation around, what's better, digital or film. Personally, I think it's just a tool like any other in the filmmaking world. Digital can be used very effectively by a lot of filmmakers. It depends what you are trying to achieve or the visual look that you want for your movie. In terms of The Revenant, I think that it lends a very clear and immediate feel to the cinematography. Sometimes film, and this is often a reason why many people like the look of film, is that it gives almost like a dreamlike impression of what you're seeing with the kind of fuzzy film grain, or the way that the light interacts on the film. Just gives it like an unreality to the picture, perhaps. There's a very distinctive look to film, and when you're shooting on digital, you can add things in post-production, obviously, but what you're getting is a much clearer, less distorted image, I suppose, and that can end up looking very ugly in a lot of movies, certainly. Or it can end up kind of being used like this in a way where what you're seeing in nature is being represented almost one-to-one. It feels like there's less of a barrier between the audience and what you're seeing on screen. It's very immediate and it has like a very absorbing feel to it because of that. I don't think that a movie is worse just because it's been shot on digital, and I think you have to look at the film and what it's trying to achieve to really say whether digital was necessary or whether it would have looked nicer on film. I'd also imagine in the conditions that the movie is being shot in, actually on location in these freezing cold landscapes, that digital would have been very preferable over film. I can imagine there was probably an advantage shooting on digital. Should probably mention what the film's actually about, just in case you haven't seen it, but it's about Leonardo DiCaprio. He's like a guide for an American fur trapping company. He gets attacked by a bear, and then his son, who is of mixed race that he had with a Native American woman, gets killed by Tom Hardy, and then he gets angry about this They leave him for dead, thinking he's probably done for, and then he crawls out of his grave and then makes his way back to civilization in order to exact his revenge on Tom Hardy. The story is very, very simple, and I think in Rewatch there is a lot of elements of the movie that I think are maybe slightly unnecessary. I think the dream sequences are really what kind of kills the pace of the film for me, especially after having seen it quite a few times. There's a very blunt, very straightforward narrative happening here, which I think is good and effective, and it works on a story level. But Leonardo DiCaprio's character has dreams throughout the movie, dream sequences which feel slightly redundant, perhaps. They're just kind of reiterating that he's lost his son, he's lost his wife, he's a sad man, and he wants revenge on Tom Hardy. That's not a very particularly difficult concept to get your head wrapped around, so when it's like the 5th time in the movie that he's having this hallucinatory image of his wife kind of repeating this mantra about this tree, and when the wind blows, the trees shake, and you would think they would fall over, but they actually don't. When it's so repetitive and it happens so many times, it kind of feels to me like they were thinking, we need something to break up the pace of the film a bit, so we need some additional element, something to kind of cut away to. It is a long movie, certainly, and I think that maybe some of those dream sequences could have been cut down or removed almost entirely, and I think you would have a much tighter film experience. This movie was directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu. I pronounced that roughly okay, I think.
Alejandro González Iñárritu.
Okay, all right.
He did Birdman before this movie came out, and that movie was like a one-take gimmick where the whole thing was made to look like it was shot in one continuous take. It wasn't. It was a lot of very long takes strung together, cleverly edited together to look like it was all one fluid take. And clearly it took a lot of inspiration from that movie that he did and what he learnt there, because although The Revenant is not a one-take film, it's not a one-take gimmick, it's not trying to do that, there are loads and loads of scenes in this movie that have one particular point of view from one camera, these really long takes. It's like an intricate dance between the actors and the camera. It helps to put you in the moment, helps to keep you grounded in the scene and to not cut away or to distract you from what's happening. And that's important because you want to get the brutality of the situation across to the audience. If you have too many cuts, you might kind of think, oh, well, they can fake this and, movie magic and stuff. But when you have these long, continuous takes, it helps you realise that what the actors are actually going through and the environments that they're in, they are real. But multiple times you'll be watching it and you'll think, hang on a minute, this scene hasn't cut. There's no cut in the scene at all. It's just one long take, and all these actors are firing on all cylinders. They're giving really great performances in the snow, and it needs to be mentioned, this movie was shot on location, got some real beautiful landscapes being shown off here. The actors are actually in those environments, and the scenes themselves are so well choreographed and coordinated, and so specifically coordinated because of those long takes. It really does make you appreciate the filmmaking that's gone into this. This could have been done in a much easier way, a much simpler way. There was a bit of controversy around the time the film came out about crew members kind of complaining that the movie was a real tough shoot, and the director had some very choice words for them, if I remember correctly. But the effort that the movie goes to maintain the authenticity and the reality of the situations that the characters are in is really commendable, and it might be something that maybe gets overlooked a little bit when you watch it, because we're so used to movies being shot on sound stages or on green screens nowadays that when you see actors of the caliber of Leonardo DiCaprio actually rolling around in the snow, actually being plunged into freezing cold water, actually eating raw meat and fish and all this crazy shit, you kind of take it for granted because you think, oh well, it's a movie, so it's all fake. But in reality, what you're watching here is very, very different from the norm, And that's one of the reasons why I think it has the reputation that it does, because there is a crazy amount of effort that has been put into the making of this movie on screen, and it shows. Makeup as well, and like hairstyling, costumes, like all of the production design qualities of the movie, it's all fantastic. The CGI, the little that it is used, I'm sure there's a lot of invisible VFX that, you know, in scenes that you wouldn't even really realise were digital or had digital elements to it. The bear attack scene is the most obvious, and that's like the most iconic thing from the movie. And really, it is still to this day incredibly impressive visually. It looks stunning. It still has a visceral impact. You're still going like, oh god, this is horrible. I don't think it's ever going to be topped either. Like, I'm not sure that you could do a better bear attack sequence than this. Cocaine Bear certainly did not come close. What Leonardo DiCaprio is doing in the movie may seem on a surface level not to be particularly worthy of acclaim. He doesn't have a lot of lines in the movie. His character is very simple, motivated by revenge. It's quite nice to see a character motivated by revenge in a big Hollywood movie. But I think what's impressive about the performance is the commitment to getting stuck in being in nature. We obviously only see like what made it into the film, but when you think about how many weeks and months they would have spent in these environments shooting the movie, it makes you appreciate the performance a little more. It makes you realize how many takes he would have done crawling out of that grave, for instance, or swimming in the freezing cold water. I think it was a deserved Best Actor win. You know, is it the greatest performance you've ever seen in a movie? Maybe not, but the context is what matters, I think, here, and the commitment is definitely there. You can't say he was not committed to this role. I would say, for me, like, looking at it and trying to get something out of it that maybe I didn't before would be some of the more, like, thematic elements of the movie. I think for me, this movie is about balance and about restoring natural balance. It's a give and take. Obviously, you have all the political thematic elements of the white Americans and the British and the French colonizing the Native Americans and all of the harm that has done. Obviously, Leo is more at one with nature, and so he's able to best nature, or he's able to work around nature, but he's very, like, his character is very diplomatic. He doesn't take anything that he doesn't need, you know. He is able to survive because he lives with a very respectful attitude towards nature. And I think it goes a little bit deeper than just be kind to nature, kids, and don't be racist towards Native Americans or any other group of, you know, marginalized people. To me, there is a theme of, like, bringing natural balance, and you could even view the story of revenge as Glass, in his own way, whether he knows it or not, restoring a kind of natural harmony. You know, you killed my son, so I'm going to kill you. It's all a give and take. There's also kind of a brutality to the movie, which I think is really nicely shown. If you're seeing this movie as like a depiction of nature, there's a sequence in the movie where Leo watches a bison be torn apart by a pack of wolves that had been hunting it. There is this kind of reverence for nature and natural causes. It's the give and take of nature again. It's seen as a very natural process. You know, wolves are hungry, they eat the bison, and then the wolves die, and then that feeds nature, and then the bison live off the land, and then it's like the circle of life. You know, you've seen The Lion King. But in the same way as there is no, like, moral judgment watching a wolf tear into a bison, it's like the same thing with Glass hunting down Fitzgerald. It's like a primal, natural predator versus prey type of situation, and it's not to be judged on any level of, like, complex morality. Like, yeah, there is a morality to it, like a revenge, but in a way it is just kind of like watching nature take its course, in the same way that watching a lion hunting an elk, it's just nature being nature. I feel like it's trying to remind you, or the audience, that human beings are as much a part of nature and are as much slave to those natural causes and natural processes as any other animal. I just kind of felt like there was a bit of a parallel going on between that. So to me, really, the movie is about the beauty and brutality of nature intertwining and how those two things are like equal, you know? The brutality of nature is kind of almost why it is so beautiful. And although I do think there are elements of it that are fairly pretentious in a way that, you know, I don't feel like the dream sequences are entirely necessary. They feel a little bit token, a little bit kind of like we have to have these in there because we need something else to pad out the movie, or we need to make it seem more kind of thematically intense than it maybe is. I feel like there's a little bit more under the surface than just a typical Hollywood revenge story. But really what you're watching the movie for is the incredibly impressive filmmaking and the commitment to the vision, which you don't get a lot. This movie feels authentic in a way that so many movies don't, and they don't even attempt to be anymore. I think it maybe doesn't hit quite as hard as when I was younger. I've seen a lot more movies now. I've kind of taken a lot more films in. But back 10 years ago, I mean, this was like the height for me. This was like, this is what filmmaking can be. But maybe the effect is slightly lessened now that I have seen many more movies since. So anyway, this movie is really good. If you can catch it in IMAX when it's released at the end of the month, I would definitely recommend doing so, even though I've never experienced that myself. Who knows, maybe it will get an IMAX release in the coming months in the UK. I hope it does. If you've not seen it yet, I definitely recommend it. It's a great movie. It still very much works in all of the ways that it worked back in the day. It has some shortfalls. It is a long movie. It maybe sort of dips a little in the middle when becomes maybe a little bit more repetitive, but ultimately it's a very impressive movie, a very visual movie. Proves that, you know, films shot on digital can also look quite nice if you know what you're doing. So yeah, there you are. Happy 10th anniversary. I never know how to end videos. Like and subscribe. Oh god, please. That's me. That's me done. Should I just, I'll just turn it off, I guess.